Hey everybody, what's up? And today I am planting my fall flower garden. I'm actually planting it, not really only planting it. But here are my list of my flowers, and they're kind of biennial flowers and perennial flowers. We're saving the hardy annuals for another day because it's not quite time to start thinking about planting hardy annuals yet. But with these biennials, we need to get a jump on it because they need to get a little bit of growth and develop a root system and things before summer is over. The first thing I'm going to start off with, of course, is these hollyhocks. Shout out to Cog Hill Farm, who wants to grow hollyhocks really badly. These are the summer carnival mix. I believe they are a really nice double mix. Now, these hollyhocks need to be direct sowed. It's not really an option for these because they do have a long taproot and they seem to absolutely hate it if you try to transplant them. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to run my faucet in my sink and get the hottest water that I can. Usually that's about 122 Fahrenheit. And I'm just going to drop the seeds into that water and let them soak for a little bit until the water is gone down to, room temperature, so about a half hour or something. And then I am just going to go outside and direct sow those seeds. I know it's kind of weird that these seeds float. They always seem to float, but this step really does seem to help. You can try to mix them up, but they float. So that's it for the hollyhocks. Getting started, first thing I am going to plant is this verbascum. Now, you can see I'm just using the, bottles cut in half just like I did my winter sowing, but I'm not going to be using the tops even though the tops are still clearly attached to the bottles. That's just for me to recycle later. No big deal. I'm just going to fill it with soil, wet the soil, and then I am going to sprinkle the seeds directly on top of the soil. I specifically do not cover the seeds, especially with flowers, unless I know for sure that the seeds need darkness to germinate, because a lot of flower seeds actually need the sunlight to germinate. So as a habit, I've just started kind of, sowing all the seeds on the surface. You can see these verbascum seeds are teeny tiny. I don't have any experience with these, so this really will be a learning experience. For the most part, I tried to do my research on all of these varieties to see if, certain things needed to be chilled in the fridge or stratified or things like that. So I'm really just kind of playing it by ear. And of course, I'll do an update video when the time comes to see, what has germinated, what has not germinated, and stuff like that. Up next, I have this Rudbeckia triloba. For the most part, Rudbeckias are very reliable in terms of just direct sowing them. The reason I'm not direct sowing them right now is because I do not have the space, and plus the competition from the weeds, especially in the summer here, can be brutal. A lot of these things would not compete with my weeds if I were to direct sow them, even though that is a very viable option. Last year, I direct sowed a lot of Rudbeckia, and even though they germinated and overwintered, the weeds just overtook them. So I'm trying them this way to see what we can get. I think we'll be successful. Here are some ones that need a freezer treatment. I have snapdragons, rose campion, and some Pacific giant delphinium. These are just going to go into the freezer for 2 weeks. I realize a lot of people might not agree that snapdragons need to go in the freezer for 2 weeks, but for me personally, it just seems like I have a lot better germination. Up next, I have some of this silver ghost. Can't ever remember how to say the name of it. It's sea holly. If you know sea holly, you might be familiar with that. This is the first time I've grown this. I've heard varying statements about whether or not these need to go in the fridge or not. I'm going to try it this way, and if we are successful, we'll know it didn't need to be in the fridge. If we're not, we'll stick them in there and try again. So we'll just keep trying and see what happens. All of these containers are going to go out in the yard in a shady place that gets sunlight in the morning and the evening, but is in the shade during the hottest part of the day. I think for the most part we'll have good germination, and we'll just have to make sure that these are staying nice and moist and not drying out. That is the key. We do not want these things to dry out. Up next is Dame's Rocket. Now, a lot of places this might be considered very invasive. I've never grown it, and I definitely am not going to let it go to seed. Or if I do, I'm going to make sure I deadhead very well. As with all of these seeds, you want to make sure, first of all, that they are not on any kind of list where you live. noxious weed list or invasive species list or things like that. It's part of being a responsible gardener. So always kind of, look into what you are growing, of course, for your cut flower garden. I also have some Icelandic poppies, which I am really, really, really excited about. For the most part, I always treat poppies as hardy annuals and plant them in September, but I see everywhere that I've read tells me that a Icelandic poppy behaves more as a biennial and maybe needs that extra growth. So this packet had tons of seeds in it, so I'm just going to sprinkle lightly here, and I'm of course going to plant some more seeds of all of these varieties later. This is kind of just a try things out, see what grows, see what germinates, and let's not put all our eggs in one basket, I guess, type of thing. That's always important when you're growing new things for the first time. You don't want to just go all in with one method. I like to just try little groupings to see what works and what doesn't. Next is Foxglove. I've never been successful with Foxglove, guys. I don't know what it is. I think the weeds in my garden are just too strong. So I think I'm really looking forward to seeing if planting in this containers is going to be helpful. As with all of these flowers that I'm planting, a lot of them are toxic. For example, foxgloves are very toxic. So you want to keep in mind who is going to be in your garden. Are your kids or your pets going to be in the garden? You might not want to plant something like foxglove that could potentially be dangerous. So always do your research and be safe. It's cool to have a gorgeous garden, but it's better to, not have to worry about the people in your garden. I'm also planting some Dusty Miller right now. I'm not sure how the Dusty Miller germination will go or the overwintering, but I just thought it would be interesting to overwinter it. If it doesn't work out, you can always winter sow these with great success and very easily. Actually, I'll probably save most of this packet for winter sowing next year. So it's really not a big deal if this one's a failure or not. I think it would just be interesting to know so we can get some good sized plants. I love the texture that Dusty Miller adds to like flower arrangements and bouquets and things. It's such a nice change up from the typical, green foliage that you see all the time. And they can also be used as bedding plants. So if you have an extra flower bed, you can put those in there too. Siberian Wallflower is next. This is a very bright orange flower. This is another, I've grown this one before, but this is another one where I've direct seeded it, but it just could not compete with the weeds that were growing in the garden. So I direct seeded it, and yeah, it germinated and everything, but the weeds just simply outcompeted it. And even though I had some blooms, you could tell they were really struggling with the competition in my yard. So I'm going to try this year. This package has tons of seeds, so I might also direct sow some somehow. We'll see what I end up doing with that. I'm not quite sure. Let's see, after the Siberian Wallflower, I also have some money plant, or you might know this one as Honesty. For the most part, these flowers are pretty unassuming, I guess. I think these are either purple or white. They kind of remind me of Dame's Rocket, but the real cool part is in the seed pods. After the flowers obviously have bloomed and started to go to seed, they kind of create these really papery seed pods that look kind of like coins, which is really neat, and they are so handy with, and dried arrangements and things like that. I think this one is going to be a really cool one to be able to have in the garden to add to our arrangements for next year and everything like that. If all goes well, cross our fingers, there's really no telling how things will turn out in my garden. If anything, I've learned that gardening is completely unpredictable. And even if you think you know what you're doing, you probably don't. Next are Sweet Williams. I just put them in the seed package right here because I saved these from my garden. Yay! These are the Sweet Williams that came back on their own this year. I didn't even plant them. So I figured, why not save the seeds for these and grow some more? This is the same thing. I'm just going to do a few transplants. Obviously, they are very good to direct sow if you can keep the weeds down around them. So I'm probably going to direct sow a lot of these as well as soon as I start seeing those come up. I have Salpiglosses here. These Salpiglosses are actually perennials, I think to zone 8 or something like that. They're going to need protection and they're going to need special germination. These need complete darkness to germinate. I have a video on how to germinate these if you've never germinated these before. So these are going to get put off to the side, and I'm going to have to germinate them in my house. So up next, I have some painted daisies. Again, I've never germinated these before, but I just wanted to say and just notice, shout out to Botanical Interest. There's even a blurb on the back. It says special treatment for germination or something like that. I can't remember what it said. What does it say? Special germination instructions is what it says. And that is so helpful. Like, this one needs light to germinate, which, like I said, a lot of flowers need light to germinate. Especially with, 20 days to emergence. That's ridiculous. It makes me nervous about the seeds getting covered. But anyway, that is so helpful. I wish every seed company would just put a little tiny bit of effort into their seed package. It means so much. It is so helpful. Thank you so much, seriously. I'm just going to sprinkle these on the top like the package told me, and those are going to go outside, and hopefully they'll germinate. Hopefully it's not too warm. That's one thing I always do worry about, is that my weather is too warm, because I mean I'm still in the heat of summer here, and some of these might not like the heat of summer germination temperatures. That's why it's important to keep it kind of in the shade and to keep them cool, I think. Up next, I have some Mechana Giants Columbine. These need to go in the freezer. I found that out too late. Next up are the Carnation. These are the I can't remember what these are. Anyway, for the most part, I treat the Carnations exactly like I do the Sweet William Dianthus. I believe they're both Dianthus. Don't quote me on that. The seeds certainly look alike, but I'm pretty sure they're both a type of Dianthus. I'm just going to sprinkle this on top of the soil, as I've done pretty much everything else. This is another one. Once the seed germinates, the seedlings seem to be a little on the slow side when it comes to, actually growing. So even if these germinate, which they do, it's frustrating because the weeds grow faster than these, and I can't keep the weeds down, and then I have seedlings and they don't make it through the winter. And I want to grow carnations, but I just end up getting frustrated, and I don't know. I'm going to do it right this year. I'm determined to get some carnations this year. Up next, I have the Canterbury Bells mix. I've already planted some Canterbury Bells, and I'm happy to say that they've germinated in the shade outside, so I'm not really too worried about this. You can see the seeds are absolutely teeny tiny. So one problem I am having is there are some little bugs of some sort that are getting into my my seedlings, I guess, and they are eating the cotyledons and like down to a stump. So, and they're like little tiny bugs. They're not aphids or anything. I don't know what they are, but I'm gonna figure it out. And I want to be successful with these. That would explain why, of course, I've never been successful with those before, because the seedlings are tiny. Up next, I am growing yarrow for the first time, and everything that I've seen online and everything that people have told me is that yarrow will grow like crazy and it doesn't really need any kind of special attention, which is great. I hope that is accurate, because I am not prepared to give them any kind of special attention. I think some yarrow does grow wild here where I live. I'm sure it's a different species or whatever, but it's interesting to see how these will do. From what I understand, they are very cold tolerant, and I shouldn't have to protect it. A lot of these, being biennials, a lot of these are more cold tolerant, and I shouldn't have to protect them really in my zone. I think people farther north, maybe in a colder zone, might have to protect some of these, but for the most part I think mine is okay. I think there are a couple, like the Carnations and stuff like that, that are a little less cold tolerant, but hopefully, I mean, I ain't got that much row cover. Hopefully we won't have to do too much. Alright, this is another one. Echo Pink Lisianthus. Lisianthus is one that definitely needs protection. It's hardy to zone 8. It's technically, I guess, a perennial or a short-lived perennial or something like that. These seeds are coated and pelleted, or whatever it's called. You'll see in a second they come in this little vial. They're got a yellow coating on it because the seeds are absolutely teeny tiny. I mean, these are the coated seeds that are this small. I have a video in the past. It's like one of my first videos showing germinating the seeds indoors and starting Lisianthus from seed, and the seedlings are teeny tiny. The little, like, it is teeny tiny. I'm going to try to grow these into the fall and overwinter them for blooms, because Starting these from seed in the wintertime is just not an option for me. That's all there is to it. It's too difficult and it's too long of a process. These things take forever. So here are all my containers out in the yard ready to go. We'll see what happens and I'll keep y'all posted and hopefully everything works out good. Really about it for this video. I hope that it was somehow helpful. I'm not quite sure that it was. If it was, be sure to subscribe. I'd love to have you and I'll keep y'all updated on what's going on. Please share this video. It would mean so much as we work to grow the channel and I hope y'all are having a real great day. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye guys.